Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where we discuss amazing books written by talented authors. For Book Lovers Only Live Radio is a proud member of the Village Connector Media Network. If you love books, we have a home for you. Now time for your host and chief book lover, Rob Brown.
Hello, book lovers and book fans. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover, and this is For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you all are doing well for this last Sunday in July and that you have a great end of the summer planned for August. We have a special treat today with VaLerie Irene stopping by our studios today to discuss her current and her upcoming book. But first, I want to take a moment to thank our first overseas call-out guest in Carol Tetlow from England. She was our featured author last week and has written a 5-book series involving a family medical practice. Carol's books are available on our website at www.forbookloversonly.com. Now, while you're on our site to purchase a copy of Carol's series, please join our Book Lovers Club. It seems to be growing each week, and we are so happy to invite more members of the family home. Submit your name and email address, and you're instantly a member. With the free membership comes our quarterly newsletter, along with updates about wonderful authors and new books. So please make sure that you join today if you're not already a member. Now, for book trivia, it's been a few weeks since we've shared book trivia on the show, and I know all of our fans seem to love it. So let's dive in with a few interesting facts about books and authors. Adults who read literature on a regular basis are more than 2.5 times as likely to do volunteer or charity work, and over 1.5 times as likely to participate in sporting activities. So there seems to be a nexus between reading and philanthropic activities and just sports and exercise. So it looks like it's a pretty good trifecta. Our second piece of trivia: more than 25 million copies of The Diary of Anne Frank have been sold around the world in more than 50 languages. The Diary of Anne Frank is a powerful diary chronicling the 2 years Anne's family spent in hiding in the attic of a warehouse in Amsterdam in the Netherlands because they were Jewish during World War II. Very, very powerful work, and it has sold more than 25 million copies worldwide. And finally, the character Alice in Alice in Wonderland was based on a real-life 10-year-old girl named Alice Liddell. Her family was friends with the author, Lewis Carroll, and he knew the family, knew the little girl, and decided to write a book about her, which we all know and love and grew up with. If you have any interesting tidbits or book or author trivia that you like to submit to our show, please do so by emailing me directly at rob@forbookloversonly.com. That's rob@forbookloversonly.com, and after verifying its accuracy, of course, we'll share it with our audience and make sure that you're acknowledged on our show for your submission, so we welcome that. Now time for today's guest. She is a native Washingtonian and has successfully written her first children's picture book, Raffi and Friends, the Lunchbox Mystery, which is just absolutely adorable. And this is a wonderful literary work for kids. She self-published this book, which I always encourage people to self-publish. There's nothing wrong with traditional publishing, but to empower authors and writers, it's a good idea to self-publish when the time is right, which was quite an accomplishment for her. She is going to tell us about her upcoming book with more adventures of Raffi and Friends. Welcome to the show, VaLerie.
Thank you, Rob. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here, too. It was so cool to bump into you, what was that, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago at the D.C. Was it Right to Publish meetup group?
Right.
It was cool. You kind of called my name out, and I was like, who's calling my name? And I saw you. I was like, oh, hey, VaLerie, how are you doing? So great to finally meet you in person. I want to dive right in. This is one of my favorite children's books, and as you recall, I had talked about your book, Raffi and Friends, on the very first show. I think it was the inaugural show. Exactly. And so happy to actually meet you and introduce you in person to our fans. How'd you get started writing children's picture books?
Well, I've been working for the federal government for over 30 years
Mm-hmm.
in various jobs, and I'm in the budget arena right now, which can really kill your creativity. It's a very structured type of work to do. And I reached one of those milestone birthdays, and I decided that I wanted to do something different, go back to the creativity that I used to do when I was a lot younger. So I've always wanted to write a book, but I wanted to make sure it was something that was really fun. And I asked myself, what is something that's been in my life for a long time that's fun, that's really fun to me? And I looked over in my bedroom, and there are my stuffed animals that I've had forever sitting there, that I said, hey, maybe that's a good idea of something to write about. Two of the characters in the book, Tori the turtle and Owie the owl, I've had since I was a toddler, and they look like I've had them since I was a toddler. They're really tattered and everything, and really loved. I have a whole collection of monkey stuffed animals that I've had for years. And the main character, Raffi the giraffe, he was the last stuffed animal that I actually made. I made him because I was trying to learn how to crochet and read crochet patterns. And I bought a book, and I saw this pattern for a giraffe. I like giraffes, they're cute. And I made him. So I made Raffi maybe a year or two before I wrote the book. So that's how these four characters came together, and I decided I'm going to write about what they would do if they're having an adventure. I originally started out thinking I would write about sort of like the Toy Story, like when the humans leave and what the animals do. But then I started thinking about it, and I just said they're going to be on their own adventures, solving their own mysteries and problems and things like that. So that's really how I got started looking at writing a children's picture book.
Okay, so when you started writing the book, obviously you had your stuffed animals. Like, how did you come up with the idea for the actual plot for the book? Like, the Lunchbox Mystery. Like, where did the lunchbox, where did that come from?
Well, it really did evolve. I started off, I was starting to write the book, and I decided to take a couple classes on writing for children. Before I took the class, it was very introductory. This is Raffi, he's this way, and this is Marlon Monroe, he's this type of person. And once I took the classes on how to write for children, and they talked about getting into the action of a children's picture book. Children have short attention spans, so you got to start with the action. So I was really trying to find a way to introduce the characters. And I wrote about them, but I looked at what is it about the characters that can bring a story about. Now, the Lunchbox Mystery actually started from a grilled cheese sandwich, and it was that I was eating a grilled cheese sandwich. I like grilled cheese. And so I started bringing elements of children into the characters, how they have this lunchbox and how it goes missing, and then developing the story from that standpoint. So, starting off with just a simple grilled cheese sandwich, but actually trying to bring in the characters and explaining who they are without just telling who they are.
Right. Well, there's so much to unpack in that last statement. First of all, I want to applaud you just for the way you're able to come up with the creativity for the book. I mean, you just basically looked around your house and said, I'm going to write a book about these stuffed animals that I've known and loved all my life, and then the grilled cheese. It's amazing, and I want people who are watching and listening to see that there's inspiration all around us to write books. There's inspiration in your home, in your job, in your family. There's so many different wonderful places where you can get creative ideas, and you obviously took advantage of that. I want to talk to you a little bit about you said the classes that you took to write a children's book. Like, first of all, how'd you find those classes?
Well, part of it is the fact that when I do something, I want to know what I'm doing. It's one thing to assume you just know how to write a story. I always like foundation. So I basically Googled writing for children. I took a class through Prince George's Community College, and one of the things I do, I love to learn different things. So I've been to Prince George's Community College, their continuing education, and taking classes on photography and all different types of subjects. So that was a natural to go to PGCC to see what they had. And they did have a class available on writing for children. I had also been taking classes through an online site called Coursera, all types of different areas. And they also had a class on writing for children. So I took both of those classes because I wanted to have a good foundation. I didn't want to just go out and say, let me just write a story, and then once an editor gets it, they just tear it
to pieces, right?
Right. So I wanted to know what I was doing. In addition to the courses, I've also read books on writing for children. And, people may think that writing a picture book is easy. And really, I thought it was going to be easy. But with children's picture books, because there's a word limit, every word has to count. So it's actually very difficult. So with taking the classes and reading the books and then some of the Facebook groups I've been in for children's book writers, I learned a lot, and that helped me with going through the process of writing the book. If you saw what I wrote originally versus what that book is, it's two totally different stories.
But see, this is one of the things, and I really hope our listeners and our viewers are paying attention. You wanted to write a book, and you just didn't say, oh, I wish I could write a book. You took action. You took a class. You looked online. You really took the initiative to make sure that you were going to learn how to write a children's book and to do it properly. And you are just a testament of what a person can do when they put their minds to something. Tell us a little bit more about like the types of things that you learn in those online courses and the courses in college. I imagine that I know one of the things that has been, I wouldn't say is of controversy, but is of interest to people is that when they look at some of the children's books that were written, let's say 20, 30 years ago, some of the gender stereotypes and the racial stereotypes and cultural stereotypes, you have to be on the lookout for that when you're writing a children's book. I imagine that's one of the things that you had to learn in your course, but tell us elaborate a little bit more on that and maybe some other things that you learned.
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't even notice, but one of my favorite children's book writers, Richard Scarry, I had his book, and it had so many gender stereotypes. And they've actually updated the book where they made them sort of gender neutral. That's part of what I learned. I also learned about, making sure to have a lot of action, don't tell, show. In my book, I'm teaching lessons on, working together, creating a plan, how to think critically. And it's not just, Owie is wise and he did X, Y, Z. It's the actions that Owie takes that you come to the conclusion that he's a wise owl. So that's showing rather than just telling was a critical part for children's, picture books.
Okay, so showing, not just telling. Now, how do you balance that? Because when you have a children's picture book, obviously you want the pictures to be vivid and action-packed, but at the same time you want to make sure that you're not skirting on the text because you want the kids to exercise their reading skills as well. Is there like a kind of like a balance that you have to meet?
There's definitely a balance. And with picture books, there's so few words, but there's a lot of edits. The book starts out with a lot of words, and you cut back and you're looking at what words are the critical words that will tell the story. So my first draft was a lot longer than what the actual book ended up. But I knew I had that limit on me, so I'm picking the critical words, not being too descriptive because the pictures are going to show certain things, so I don't have to tell them, and making sure that there some words are repetitive. You're trying to teach words to children. So all of those things together brought the children's picture book to what it is today.
I see. And there's a distinct difference between a regular children's book and a children's picture book. I mean, obviously there's a difference, but is like one more challenging than the other? Or?
Well, being that I've only written picture books, and that was really what I studied, I did learn that there's various types of books. You have the board books for the little small babies. You have chapter books, the middle grade, the young adult. But I focused on picture books, so I thought it would be very easy because the amount of words are limited, but it's actually very challenging because of that. How that differs with other ones, I guess it depends on the author, and if they found that going from different levels to be a challenge. I don't know yet, since I'm still in that picture book arena.
I see. I want to read a little bit for our listeners and our viewers from your book. I'm not going to read everything. If you want to read everything, you have to go buy the book. But I definitely want to read a little bit. The three friends began to look everywhere. They ran to the school and looked in their classroom. And I want to show the picture and how vivid it is. I hope it's not a glare. They ran to the library and looked on the bookshelves. They ran to the playground and looked on the swings, under the slide, and on the monkey bars. They ran to the park and looked behind the trees. They even ran to the pond and looked under the ducks. So obviously there's a lot of running. There's a lot of action. I can see where you emphasize the action. Now, the illustrator was Amy Rodinger. So obviously you had to have had a very close working relationship with Amy. How does that dynamic work with regards to actually writing and saying, okay, Amy, I need you to draw this certain way and have Raffi do this with this certain angle? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm glad you asked about the illustrator, and I want to give a little bit of background on that first. I never met Amy. I met her through a Facebook children's group, and Amy and I communicated through email the entire time. We had one telephone conversation. Amy lives about 400 miles from me, and the one thing I could tell from Amy, I did a lot of research on her. I looked her up on Amazon, and she's illustrated a lot of books, so I had a lot of trust there. But one thing with Amy, and going back and forth through email, I made sure to really clarify and confirm. I sent her a manuscript. A lot of times when you're a self-published, traditionally published authors, they don't have to look for their illustrator. The publisher finds it. So as a self-published author, I had to find my own illustrator. Although I could use like a vanity press or something like that, and they do all the work and you pay them. But I did it myself. And I sent her the manuscript. I had faith in her, but there were certain things that I actually had to have in the book, like the part that you read where it said they looked under the ducks. I said in that illustration, you have to show one of the characters holding a duck up, and you'll see Marilyn Monroe is holding up a duck. But other than that, I mean, I gave Amy a lot of leeway because I even purchased a couple of her books before I hired her and looked through them. And I liked her style. I had a lot of faith in her. But we did go back and forth on, she would do the pencil drafts first, send them to me, I approve them. Then she did the finals. Then she started to color them. And there were a couple of illustrations where I asked her, oh, can you change the color of the sliding board from purple to blue, things like that.
Right.
I mean, she pure professional, had no problem. So it was interesting working through email, never meeting each other, and we still haven't met. And she's now working on my second book, but it was a very good relationship that started with a good contract.
That sounds amazing. I mean, she did a phenomenal job. Amy,
She
if you're
did.
watching, you did an awesome job. This is one of these books that when I read it, I like it so much. I'm like, man, I wish this book existed when I was a child.
Thank you.
It's just a great book. And once again, I love how you basically just took control of the entire process. Now, with regards to self-publishing this book, you self-publish it. Did you even consider trying to get it traditionally published, query letters, literary agents? You're like, you know what? I'm just going to do this on my own.
You know what? I thought about it for a second. Like I said, I work for the government. It's the bureaucracy. And reading about the traditional published path, right now, I didn't want to go through that. I had certain things as my vision, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the control and the freedom. Maybe once I retire and become a writer full time, I'll be okay with going the traditional route. The other thing with books, you're selling the manuscript to the publisher. And unless you have things in your book specifically that make them have to do certain things, like if I described Raffi as a giraffe and that he was a certain color and his face looked a certain way, they could have made Raffi a bear. And so I wanted the characters to be my stuffed animal characters. So I talked to my mom about it actually, and she was the one that said, "Oh no, you can't go that route. You have to do the self-publishing because the characters have to look like the way they look." So I never submitted. I never looked for an agent or even considered going the traditional route. Although in the future I won't rule that out. But for right now, I wanted the freedom. I also enjoyed the business part of it. Some authors don't, the promoting and going to the book expos and all the behind the scenes, doing the websites and all that. Some authors don't like that, but I was a business major, so that part was fun for me too.
Right.
So the book part and the business part of and keeping records and all that, I just really enjoyed it and had a good time with it.
So it's just natural for you. You're just like, hey, this is like, a normal course of business. I want to ask you about how you, as you work for the government and you're writing this book, how did you kind of manage your schedule? Because you're writing your own book, you're self-publishing it, you're working with Amy with regards to illustrations, you're working with an editor. There's a lot of moving pieces there, and you're working for the government, I imagine full-time for the government, so you've got a lot of things on your plate. How are you able to juggle all that and still write a book as such high quality as Raffi?
Thank you. Well, it's just a matter of if it's something you want to do, you'll find the time to do it. My evenings were spent with Raffi and his friends, and that's what we did. That was my play while I was going through the process of getting my first book done. I didn't do a lot of other activities because I had those and I had the deadline that I wanted to make. So it wasn't that much of a struggle. Daytime was work, evening was devoted to my book. So that's what I did.
And how long did Raffi take to basically create from start to finish? How long did you manage your schedule like that?
I first thought to write the book in October of 2015. I started writing it in January. I think I had the book finished by March. And then I had to find the editor, the illustrator. So Amy got the book in June to illustrate, and we were done by September, and it was online for sale October 5th, 2016.
What type of reception have you got? I mean, I love the book. I think it's amazing. It's already one of my favorite children's books of all time. Absolutely. What type of reception have you gotten from parents, from children, from teachers?
Oh, and that's one of the things I love, the reception from the young readers and their parents and the teachers. They love it. One thing everybody points out is the vivid colors of the book. I just love to hear from the children and talk to them, and they're so excited. All kids love grilled cheese, so they can relate.
Adults do too.
And when I go to book expos and even to the schools, I bring my crocheted Raffi. So they love looking at him and hugging him and everything. So the reception has been awesome. It's just been a wonderful experience. Meeting the readers, even meeting other authors, talking about books and the challenges. Most of the challenges are around marketing, but right. I think the reception has been awesome. People love the book. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but they really do love the book. And I took a lot of time to ensure that the book looked and felt and read just like a traditionally published book.
It is. I mean, it totally is. I mean, the quality is just top notch. So tell us what's next for Raffi and his friends.
Well, the second book should be coming out in early fall. There's another mystery. Something is missing, or the friends are trying to find out what something is doing. And one of the things that I always try to do is have some messages in the book. So this new book, some of the messages are respecting other people's property, forgiveness, hard work, doing what you need to do to get what you want. So the book centers around a pair of magic eyeglasses.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't. Magic eyeglasses. So from a Lunchbox Mystery to magic eyeglasses.
And the title will be Raffi and Friends, The Mystery of the Magic Glasses.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to bring you back because I want to read that and I want to hear all about it. And as we wrap up here, we have a lot of book fans who are thinking about writing books, who are considering it, need that extra step with regards to taking that step. And just need a little bit of encouragement. Now, tell us a little bit in just a couple of sentences from someone who went from basically 0 to 100 miles an hour in writing an awesome children's book. What type of advice can you give our listeners?
I would give the advice to make sure you learn as much as you can, but don't get overwhelmed. There is a lot of information out there about writing, but look at the source of the information to make sure it's correct. Join some Facebook groups. The people who write, they are phenomenal. They love sharing information. If you don't know how to do something, they will help you. But do your homework and make sure you're coming with the fact that you've studied and you know what you're trying to do. Don't just come in and ask them for everything. Right now, I'm working with a young lady. Same situation. She's doing her first book, and we're talking through the process of hiring an illustrator. I'm going to share with her a sanitized copy of my contract. So I would say do your homework, don't cut corners, and really make sure to have your book edited. Do not have it edited by a friend. Have it edited by a professional, not your cousin and your, unless they're a professional editor, because it will show. So, and just do what you want to do. Go ahead and do it. Like Nike said, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I like it. Raffi and Friends, The Lunchbox Mystery is available at forbookloversonly.com. Make sure you pick up your copy. VaLerie, thank you so much for stopping by. We are really excited about your next book. We're out of time, but be sure to join us for the next 2 weeks where we will be showing special episodes for Book Lovers Only TV, where we were on location in Bogota, Colombia. I had the privilege and the honor of interviewing two wonderful Colombian authors, Edvar Augusto Delgado Verano and Oscar Bustos, and we will be airing special Colombia edition broadcasts for Book Lovers Only TV in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. You won't want to miss those. Once again, VaLerie, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover, and this is for Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you from Bogota, Colombia.